Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're tackling a set of ideas that all sort of circle around how we get where we want to go. In life, work, everything.
Yeah, we're digging into achieving goals, trying to stay focused when, well, everything seems designed to distract us, and also building up that resilience, that inner strength to keep pushing when things get tough.
Exactly. And we've pulled together some really interesting sources for this.
We have. We're looking at academic work on something called academic delay of gratification.
Hmm.
Basically, can you put off the fun stuff now for better grades later?
Uh-huh.
We've also got some really practical stuff on workplace focus, recognizing good work, Cal Newport's idea of deep work, which is fascinating.
Okay, I've heard of that.
And also perspectives on quiet leadership, a different kind of leading, plus, the bedrock of it all,
Mm,
resilience.
right. So for you, the learner, our mission here is to sift through all this and pull out the core actionable stuff. We want you to understand what really drives effective goal setting, how to, actually concentrate with all the pings and notifications.
Definitely. Figure out what motivates us, and crucially, how to bounce back when things inevitably go wrong. And hopefully do all that without feeling totally overwhelmed.
Okay, so let's get into it. Where should we start? Maybe with that foundation. Delaying gratification.
Yeah, let's start there, that academic delay of gratification you mentioned.
Right. So research, especially from folks like Benvenuti, really flags this as a major predictor for success, particularly in learning. It's basically the student's ability to resist, the immediate impulse for the bigger academic payoff later.
So it's that classic choice, isn't it? Study for the big exam tomorrow or go to that concert tonight.
Exactly that. The concept's right there, immediate fun, but the good grade is,
Uh,
well, it's delayed.
and it's not just random luck who makes which choice, right? There's something more to it.
Absolutely. Earlier thinking might have framed it as just, oh, that's their personality. But researchers like Mitchell really showed it's more like a skill set. It's a competence you can actually develop.
Ah, okay, so it's learnable. Yeah, learnable through different strategies. And Benvenuti's work really confirms this, showing clear links between being able to delay gratification and, well, things like higher intelligence scores, better academic results, even smoother social skills.
Wow. So it connects to a lot.
It really does. It suggests
Yeah.
that prioritizing those bigger future rewards is pretty fundamental for, overall success and just functioning well.
And Benvenuti and Karabenic, they actually measured this, didn't they? With a scale.
They did, yeah. The academic delay of gratification scale. They'd present students with scenarios like that concert versus study example and see which they chose.
One of the results.
A clear link. Students more willing to delay to choose studying, they generally had higher GPAs.
Okay, that makes intuitive sense. But you said it wasn't just about grades.
No, exactly. It digs deeper into the why. Their research looked at the motivational belief behind those choices. They found that students who were better at delaying gratification also tended to, well, value their academic tasks more. They saw the work as important, useful.
Right, they saw the point.
Exactly. And crucially, they had a stronger sense of self-efficacy.
Self-efficacy.
Right.
That's the belief you can actually do it, right? That I can succeed at this feeling.
Precisely. Bandura's concept. If you genuinely believe you can pass that exam or write that paper well,
Then skipping the concert feels less like a sacrifice and more like an investment.
you got it. It makes putting in the effort, delaying the reward, feel much more achievable and worthwhile.
And this ties into the different kinds of motivation too, doesn't it? Like doing it because you love it versus doing it for the grade.
Yes, exactly. It connects to both intrinsic motivation, doing it for the sheer enjoyment or interest in the learning itself,
Uh-huh.
and extrinsic motivation, doing it for a separate outcome, like the grade, or avoiding trouble, or getting praise. The research suggests both can actually fuel that ability to delay gratification and stick with long-term goals.
So it's not just if you're motivated, but how and why.
Right. And going back to that task value idea, how important, useful, or interesting you find the task, that's a huge piece. Benvenuti and Karabenic really emphasize this. If you value the delayed reward, the good grade, the knowledge,
You're more willing to wait for it.
much more willing. And it also connects to how students approach the task itself. There's this idea of task goal orientation.
Okay, what's that?
Basically, are you focused on truly mastering the material, really understanding it, or are you just focused on performing well, like getting the A regardless of understanding?
I see the difference.
Benvenuti found that students with that mastery focus, the task goal orientation, they showed a positive link with delaying gratification.
But the performance-focused ones didn't.
Interestingly, no significant relationship there. It suggests that genuinely wanting to learn and understand is a stronger driver for making those long-term choices than just wanting the external validation of a good grade.
That makes a lot of sense. If you actually care about the subject, you're more invested in putting the time in.
Precisely. And it even links to the strategies students use.
How so?
Well, the research also connected academic delay of gratification to using more effective cognitive learning strategies. Things like rehearsal, elaboration, really thinking deeply about the material, connecting it to what you already know, organizing it.
So not just passively reading, but actively working with the information.
Exactly. Deeper processing. Students doing that were also better at delaying gratification. It seems thinking deeply about the subject makes you more likely to prioritize the subject.
And what about managing your learning, like time management and stuff?
That's the other side of the coin, self-regulation. Benvenuti and Karabenic found strong links there, too.
Oh,
Students better at delaying gratification were also better at managing their study time, controlling their study environment, regulating their effort, like pushing through when it gets hard, and even knowing when to ask for help.
so it's all interconnected. The motivation, the strategies, the self-management, it all supports that ability to focus on the long game.
It really paints a picture of self-regulated, motivated learning. Okay, so we see why delaying gratification is key and what supports it. But let's zoom in on that motivation piece itself, what really gets us going.
Right. We mentioned intrinsic and extrinsic. Let's unpack that a bit more.
Well, self-determination theory, or SDT, from Ryan and Deci, gives us a really useful framework here.
Okay.
They distinguish between different types of motivation based on the reasons behind our actions. Intrinsic, as we said, is doing something because it is interesting or enjoyable.
Like coding because you love solving the puzzle.
Exactly. Extrinsic is doing it for a separate outcome.
Like coding because it pays the bills or gets you good job review.
Right. But SDT points out that extrinsic motivation isn't just one thing. It exists on a spectrum based on how much autonomy, how much self-direction you feel.
Ah, okay. So it's not just external reward, yes or no.
Not at all. You could be doing something purely because someone's forcing you, or you fear punishment that's very low autonomy. Or you could be doing it because, even if the task itself isn't fun, you personally value the outcome. You see it as important for your own goals. That's much more autonomous, even though it's still technically extrinsic.
Like maybe you don't love doing expense reports, but you value being responsible and getting reimbursed, so you do them willingly.
Exactly. That's a more internalized form of extrinsic motivation. And the research consistently shows when people feel more autonomous, more in control, and also competent, like they can actually do the task well,
Wow.
their intrinsic motivation is more likely to flourish. And even for those extrinsic goals, feeling that sense of personal buy-in makes a huge difference in engagement and performance.
Which brings us right back to that idea of task value we talked about earlier, doesn't it?
Absolutely. If you see the task or its outcome as important, useful, relevant to you,
You're just more likely to do it and do it well and resist checking your phone every 5 minutes.
precisely. That positive link Benvenuti and Karabenic found is key. Valuing the goal makes you willing to invest the effort and delay that gratification. You have to actually or at least value that delay alternative, as Benvenuti put it.
Okay, so having that value, that self-belief, it fuels our ability to stay the course. But man, even with the best motivation, staying focused, that's the battle, isn't it? Especially at work.
Oh, absolutely. The modern workplace can feel like an obstacle course for concentration. And this is where Cal Newport's concept of deep work becomes so relevant.
Deep work, right.
But before we get into the how-to, let's just absorb the scale of the problem. Some research, Proof Hub highlighted this, suggests the average employee loses something like 2 hours a day just to distractions.
2 hours.
Seriously. And worse, it apparently takes, on average, over 20 minutes, like 23 minutes, just to get your focus back after you've been interrupted.
Wow. Okay, that's huge. No wonder it feels like you're constantly catching up. What kind of distractions are we talking about?
Well, they broke it down pretty well. You've got the obvious physical ones, noisy colleagues, maybe just a messy desk. Then the big one, digital distractions. Emails, Slack messages, social media pings. Proof Hub mentioned that stat about employees checking email or chat apps like every 6 minutes on average.
Yeah, every 6 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right, sadly. It's constant.
It is. Then there are environmental things, bad lighting, maybe it's too hot or cold, and internal stuff too.
Like stress.
Yeah, emotional distractions like stress or anxiety, and mental ones like just mind-wandering or trying to multitask, which, by the way, research suggests can slash productivity by up to 40%.
40%. Okay, so multitasking is basically just switching rapidly and losing time.
Pretty much.
Yeah,
And finally, interpersonal stuff, unnecessary meetings, colleagues dropping by your desk just for a second.
right. The quick questions that take half an hour.
Exactly. It all adds up.
So deep work, how does that offer a solution?
Newport defines it as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate.
Okay, so it's the really focused, high-value thinking and creating, as opposed to...
As opposed to shallow work. These are the non-cognitively demanding logistical tasks often performed while distracted. Think routine emails, scheduling, basic admin. Necessary sometimes, but they don't usually move the needle on big projects.
And the problem is we spend way too much time on the shallow stuff, right? I saw some data, maybe from Asana, saying knowledge workers spend like 60% of their time on work about work, coordinating, communicating about work, instead of the actual skilled work itself.
That sounds about right. And the benefits of deliberately carving out time for deep work are really significant.
Like what?
Well, for one, it helps combat attention residue. That's the idea that when you switch tasks quickly, part of your brain is still thinking about the last task, so you can't fully focus on the new one. Deep work minimizes that. Ah, okay, so you get deeper focus.
Exactly. It also, over time, literally rewires your brain to be better at concentrating and learning complex things faster. Plus, the quality of work you produce in that state is just much higher.
And it feels better too, doesn't it? That flow state where you're totally absorbed.
Absolutely. That feeling of effortless action, total immersion that often comes during deep work.
Okay, sold on the benefits. How do we actually do it? In the real world, with all those distractions.
Newport and others building on his ideas like Asana offer practical steps. A huge one is creating a dedicated distraction-free space and time.
Like closing your door, putting on headphones.
Yeah, or finding a quiet conference room, maybe working from home sometimes if you can. And crucially, setting clear boundaries. This might mean scheduling specific focus blocks in your calendar where you're just unavailable.
Turning off notifications seems essential too.
Absolutely critical. Using technology intentionally. Turning off email pop-ups, silencing your phone, maybe using website blockers. It's about controlling the tech, not letting it control you. Makes sense. What else?
Delegating effectively can free up your time from shallower tasks. Being ruthless about meetings, are they necessary? Can they be shorter? Can an email suffice?
Right. Saying no to some meetings.
Or just making the ones you do have super focused. And consciously limiting multitasking. Trying to focus on one cognitively demanding task at a time.
Okay, so it's about being really intentional with your time and environment, protecting that focus.
Exactly. Now, thinking about the workplace again, if people are managing to do this deep, focused work, how do we encourage it? That brings in the human element, like recognition.
Yeah. Employee recognition. How does that fit in?
Well, sources like Zendesk really stress making recognition specific and timely.
Not just good job, but good job on this specific thing because...
Precisely. When you connect praise directly to the desired behavior, like someone successfully blocking time for deep work and producing great results, and you do it promptly, it reinforces that behavior. It taps into that motivation we discussed.
It makes the effort feel seen and valued.
Exactly, which links interestingly to another idea, this concept of quiet leadership.
Quiet leadership, what's that about? It sounds different.
It is. It's from Joseph Badaracco Jr. He contrasts it with the sort of stereotypical, heroic leader who's always in the spotlight. Quiet leaders work more behind the scenes, they're pragmatic, focused on solving real, everyday problems.
So less about grand visions and more about actually making things work day to day.
Very much so. They're realists. They understand the messy complexities, the uncertainties, the political realities of organizations. They focus on those tricky right versus right dilemmas.
Right versus right mean...
In situations where you have genuinely competing, valid responsibilities or values. There's no easy, clear, right answer. Quiet leaders navigate those murky waters.
Okay, and Badaracco outlines some principles they follow. How do they operate?
He does. 5 guidelines, essentially. And they're really relevant for sticking with long-term goals and handling setbacks. First, don't kid yourself.
Be realistic.
Yeah. Honest assessment of what you can actually control, what's possible, what the real constraints are. No wishful thinking.
Okay. What's next?
Second, have some skin in the game. This acknowledges that motivations are often mixed. Self-interest isn't necessarily bad. It can actually drive positive actions if channeled correctly. It's about understanding your own stake and others.
Hmm. Interesting. Less purely altruistic than the heroic ideal.
Much more pragmatic. Third, buy time. Don't rush complex decisions. Find ways to slow things down, gather more info, let things unfold a bit. Avoid knee-jerk
That
reactions.
sounds wise, especially under pressure. Number 4.
Drill down. Really investigate the problem. Understand the details, the nuances, the root causes. Don't just skim the surface.
Get into the weeds.
If necessary, yes. And finally, fifth, bend the rules and look for compromises. This isn't about being unethical, but about finding practical, workable solutions when formal rules or procedures clash with getting the right thing done. Creative problem solving within ethical bounds.
So it's a very grounded, realistic, almost incremental approach to leadership and problem solving.
Exactly. It's not flashy, but it's often incredibly effective. It reminds me of that Albert Schweitzer quote. Something about the power lying in small and obscure deeds.
Yeah, that fits perfectly. It's the consistent, thoughtful, often unseen effort that adds up.
It really does. And that ability to keep going, to navigate those complexities and setbacks quietly and effectively. Well, that leads us straight to the final piece of this puzzle, resilience.
Resilience.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely crucial. Because no matter how well you plan or focus, things will go wrong. Setbacks happen.
They absolutely do. And resilience, as the Mayo Clinic defines it, is basically our ability to adapt well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. It's about bouncing back.
It's not about not feeling the difficulty, right?
Yeah,
It's about not letting it derail you permanently, not feeling like a victim or just stuck.
exactly. Resilient people still experience hardship, but they can work through it, learn from it, and keep moving forward. It helps you see past the current problem, still find enjoyment in life, and handle stress more effectively. It can even be protective against things like depression and anxiety.
And the good news is, it's not just something you either have or you don't,
Right.
right? You can build it.
Yes, definitely. Like delaying gratification, it's seen much more as a skill or a set of skills that can be learned and developed over time.
So how do we do that? What helps build resilience?
The Mayo Clinic offers some great practical tips. A big one is connection building and nurturing strong, supportive relationships with family, friends, community groups. Having people to lean on is huge.
Makes sense. Social support.
Another is finding meaning each day. Having goals, a sense of purpose, doing things that feel valuable to you, even small things.
Okay, what else?
Learning from your past. Thinking about how you've coped with difficulties before, what worked, what didn't. Recognizing your strengths that helped you get through.
Right, drawing on past successes.
Staying hopeful is another key element. Trying to maintain a positive outlook, accepting that change is part of life, and looking towards the future even when things are tough right now.
The optimistic but realistic viewpoint.
Exactly. And then there's self-care. Taking care of your physical health, sleep, nutrition, exercise, and your mental well-being, mindfulness, relaxation, doing things you enjoy. It sounds basic, but it's foundational.
Can't pour from an empty cup, as they say.
Right. And finally, taking action. Instead of wishing problems away or avoiding them, resilient people tend to face challenges head-on. They figure out what needs to be done and take steps, even small ones, to address the situation.
So the mix of mindset, support systems, self-care, and proactive problem solving.
That sums it up pretty well. And when you step back and look at everything we've talked about,
Yeah.
you really see how interconnected it all is. That ability to delay gratification for a long-term goal,
Uh-huh.
it's fueled by valuing that goal, by having the self-efficacy, believing you can actually achieve it.
Right, which is your motivation.
Exactly. And then managing distractions through deep work principles. That's what allows you to put in the focused effort needed to make real progress towards that valued goal.
Okay, I see the links.
And then quiet leadership provides that pragmatic, resilient way to navigate all the obstacles and curveballs that inevitably come up when you're pursuing something worthwhile over the long haul.
It's the sustainable way to keep moving forward through the messiness.
Yes. And resilience itself is the underlying capacity that lets you bounce back from the failures, the setbacks, the bad days, and maintain your commitment. Without it, the first big hurdle could just stop you in your tracks.
It holds it all together.
It really does. And you know that phrase you sometimes hear maybe on Reddit or places like that, hustle in silence, let your success make the noise.
Yeah, I've seen that.
I think that kind of captures a thread running through all this. It speaks to that internal motivation, the focus on the work itself, like in deep work, rather than constantly needing external applause. It aligns with that quiet, persistent, resilient approach.
Hmm. That's a great connection. Focus on the process, the deep work, the quiet effort, and trust that the results will eventually speak for themselves.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay, so for you, the learner, wrapping this up, hopefully you've got a clearer picture now of why these different pieces, prioritizing long-term rewards, cultivating focus, adopting maybe a more pragmatic leadership style, building resilience, why they're all so fundamental to actually achieving what you set out to do.
And crucially, remember that building these capacities, your ability to delay gratification, your focus, your resilience, it's an ongoing practice. It's not like flipping a switch.
Definitely not. So here's a thought to leave you with. Pick one area we discussed today that really struck a chord. Maybe it's how easily you get distracted, or maybe it's how you approach a big, long-term project or learning goal.
Uh-huh.
Now, think about that idea of quiet leadership and Schweitzer's small and obscure deeds. What's one small, practical, maybe even unnoticed action you could take this week to nudge yourself towards better focus or greater resilience in that specific area?
And maybe reflect, too, on how embracing that hustle in silence idea might shift your own motivation. Would focusing more internally, less on external validation, change how you approach your goals?
Lots to think about. We've really just scratched the surface here today on these really deep topics.
Absolutely.
So we definitely encourage you to revisit any ideas that sparked something for you. Maybe look into the sources we drew from or related research. Think about the specific challenges you face with delaying gratification or staying focused. How can you start applying these principles in your own life, your own situation?
Yeah, make it personal.
Exactly. Thanks for taking the deep dive with us.